You are listening to the After the Timeout podcast, hosted by Todd Zazadil and Jon Pilecki, two high school coaches looking to help others spread their passion for the coaching profession. Tune in for more episodes for anything coaching related in-game, outside of the game, and anything in between.
On today's episode, brought to you by VREP's Virtual Playbook, we are joined by Mike Winters, head boys basketball coach at Harlem High School and author of his new book, The Journey, Lessons from the Hardwood. Coach, thank you so much for joining us. How are you doing tonight?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me, guys.
We are very excited to have you on. So we always start with, we call it pregame warm-ups. We just call it the opening tip, just a way to get the guests comfortable and kind of just talking. So we wanted to start for you specifically with the process of writing a book. Obviously, you know, Todd and I are both coaches. I don't think I could take on writing a book, but
no, I have no clue how to start that.
So we wanted to go through, you know, first of all, what made you decide to write the book? Kind of how did you start? And then kind of just take us through the process.
Well, I think the book was born probably much like your podcast, you know, the pandemic hit and a little bit of boredom set in. And, you know, just it's something that it's a passion of mine. Helping coaches is a passion of mine. It's something I've always liked doing. I love speaking at coaches clinics. I love doing podcasts and coaches roundtables and stuff like that. We did a virtual roundtable as well for several months there during the pandemic, where we were just trying to share the game a little bit. And so that's kind of where it started. And you know, for me, it was really, it's everything I wish I had as a guide when I started 25 plus years ago. And, you know, we just don't get that. You get bits and pieces, and sometimes you stumble across this here at a clinic, or you stumble across this from a coach that happens to be a mentor or a friend, but you just don't get it all in one place. And for me, it was really about everything from, you know, how to value, you know, the importance of valuing the relationships. I think early on, I kind of missed that as a young coach. How to build your coaching philosophy, X's and O's, Y's, and you know, just across the board. And you know, it's just a lifetime of lessons learned. I've been really lucky to be a part of this game for, you know, over 30 years now, between being a player in high school and coaching at the high school level. So been blessed, and just wanted to pass some of that on to everybody.
So I have just a quick follow-up. You mentioned being, you know, a mentor. I'm just curious, who were some of your mentors in the Illinois high school game, you know, as you started your coaching career? I think that's interesting.
Yeah. So for me, my brother-in-law, actually, Dean Marnetti was, you know, he wasn't my brother-in-law at the time, but he had, so I served 1 year with my former high school coach, Ed Harriman, and I was 19 and coaching 17, 18-year-olds at the varsity level. And the next year he had moved on, and my future brother-in-law came in and took over the position and hired me on as a head freshman coach. And I spent 5 years with him side by side, but obviously, you know, we're still together, you know, family get-togethers and all that stuff. And so he's been a big mentor of mine. Carl Armato played at Northern Illinois University. He was a captain there back in the early 80s and has been just a great college and high school head coach in our area. You know, I'd certainly consider Carl a mentor, and Jack McCarthy, another, just a great high school coach Jack McCarthy was that guy that he always coached at the school that didn't have much talent, and, you know, and didn't win a ton of games, but the guys who coached against him respected him a ton and knew that upset could happen any night. So those are a few guys that took me under their wing. There's, man, countless more, but three that really had a big impact on me when I was young.
So I think first we wanted to give you a chance to kind of promote your program, talk about your guys. And then I kind of got a second part of the question of how you're preparing for the season. But like I said, first thing first, you know, let you toot your program's own horn a little bit.
All right. Well, so this program is, this was kind of the ultimate rebuild for us. You know, when I took over Harlem High School, this is my 5th season. Historically, just not a strong program, just really not a lot of great history to draw off of. I left Boylan Catholic High School in Rockford, Illinois, which is one of the stronger programs in state history. Just a tremendous program and a great job, but private school paycheck doesn't always pay the bills, or it'll pay the bills, but that's about it. And so I, you know, just sitting there like, you know, I want to retire before I'm 75 or 80 years old. So I just kind of had to, unfortunately, move on from a great position. Took a year off and went and got a master's degree, and just kind of re-energized, and this Harlem job opened up. We happen to live in the district. For me, it was an opportunity to coach my son again. My son is a junior now. And you know, it also was a challenge I needed. I had never had a losing season in my career. Taking over a place like Harlem for me was just at that time was the opportunity to find out how good I really was, to be honest with you. And so our first year we won 9 games. It was my first losing season ever. We went 6-12 in the conference, and people were excited about that. I was ready to quit. I'm like, maybe I can't do this. I was ready to quit, and people were excited about it. So year 2, we won 20 games. We won a regional for just the second time in like 44 years in school history. So we were, trending the right direction. Year 3, we had 9 seniors graduate. It was a rebuild situation for sure. And then our best player was lost for the entire season. So we went 500 in the league, finished right at about 500 in the season. And last year in the pandemic shortened year, we went 10-4. We took second in our league. Didn't have a postseason to play. We were certainly on pace for a 20-win season last year if we had been able to play the entire season. So we're getting there. Year 3, I think, was a big key for us when we were able to go 9-9. I told my assistants, I'm like, as historically bad as this program has been, if our down years from here on out are 500 in our league, we're going to be okay. So I feel like we've kind of turned the corner. We've got a lot of talent coming back. We've got 3 starters returning who 2 of them got all conference recognition. One of them probably was right there knocking on the door of that. And we've got a really strong junior class coming up with them, a class that went 26-3 as freshmen. And then we kind of split them up a little bit their sophomore year. We took a few of them up to the varsity level. And so now they're kind of reuniting as well. So we're excited. We think we're in a really good spot. Our league's going to be super competitive, probably more so this year than any other year. So we've got our work cut out for us, but I feel like we've positioned ourselves really well, and we've got our culture in a really good spot.
All right. So then that takes me into preparing for this season, right? We're going to throw out last year because nobody had a playbook for that one. None of us, as much as we're prepared, as much as we've thought about things, nobody had anything ready for that. So we had a normal summer, as much as we can here. And now we're getting into what is supposed to be a regular year, right? Full season, playoffs, all that. So right, how are
the air quotes? Absolutely. Yeah.
Oh yeah, we got it. All right. So how is your staff and you preparing for that season, as well as preparing your players?
Well, here in Illinois, we don't get to do any skill of sports stuff during this time of year. So, and I know some states are that way. Some other states, I know California can do whatever they want, whenever they want. I think Georgia has very few limitations. It's funny just talking to more coaches across the country and finding this stuff out. But so we primarily focus on really heavy in the weight room. Starting next week, we'll move on to preseason conditioning, where we're actually doing a lot more cardio stuff. We do a lot of injury prevention stuff, a lot of knee and ankle strength, try to strengthen ligaments and tendons and all that stuff. And, we'll do, like I said, we'll continue to lift. We do play at open gym a little bit. We try to encourage them to get shots up first, but we really can't control that at open gym. So you're kind of dependent upon some self-motivated kids to kind of take the reins and say, hey, let's get 100 shots up. Let's do this before we start playing. And our open gym times are limited, man. We had our homecoming this year is in October, so we got a lot going on, and we're lucky if we get one open gym a week in October right now. But my feeling on open gym, it's kind of a necessary evil. It's a way to keep the kids engaged. Where you're really gaining right now is in the weight room and doing that speed and agility stuff, doing that conditioning stuff, and getting them ready physically.
So now I kind of want to dig a little deeper. So obviously, you've I believe this is your 5th program that you've been in.
It is, yeah, it is.
So you were at Oregon, you were at Rockford Boylan, you were at Jefferson, you were at Rock Falls, now Harlem. I really want to go into this. This will be my 6th year running the high school program that I run. But I kind of want you to talk about. You had mentioned culture. That's a big deal to me. But how do you go about laying the foundation at each school? Obviously, you've now taken over 5 times. You had to lay that foundation at each one. And then it's kind of a second part of that is, what were things you did similar at each of those? Rockford, Boylan, Oregon,
sure.
Jefferson, Rock Falls, Harlem. And then what are some things that you changed over time in laying that foundation?
I think this is one thing that a lot of young coaches need to hear. When you take over a program, it cannot be about your ego, and you have to be flexible. I think, we all get really geeked up for our first head coaching job, right? And we've got this vision of, You know, we've got these things that we like to do, things that we've been exposed to that we just, man, we're going to press, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. But then you get there and your guys maybe aren't really able to do all of the things that you want to do. And you also got to realize that's a tough situation for the kids as well. Like, they didn't ask for a coaching change. In some cases, it might be a blessing. In some cases, maybe it was a coach they were really fond of or really close to. So you have to be flexible. So the answer to your question is it has been very different every time I've taken over a program. You know, when Oregon was my first head coaching job, we were fortunate to have a group of seniors who were ready to win right away. So we jumped in and you know, we had a system that, you know, I had in mind. But I learned right off the bat, there were some things that they were really good at. And I had a couple holdovers from the staff that said, you know, you might want to consider this because these guys just do these things really well. And I was kind of, okay, let's see it. Let's take a look at it. You know, we're talking X's and O's offensively, especially. And I'm like, yeah, I'm good with that. You know, you're right. They look comfortable with it. They look like they run it pretty well. I get to Rockford Jefferson. That was my alma mater, but you know, our basketball IQ wasn't great at Rockford Jefferson. There's no feeder program. Really wasn't the kids' fault, but the system was just kind of failing them a little bit. But man, we had talent. We had D1 talent across the board. We had 3 different D1 players there in the 2 years I was the head coach there. And in both of those first 2 situations, the teaching situation, you know, you get pink slipped, you get riffed as a new teacher, and sometimes you just got to move on. So those just didn't work out from a teaching standpoint. You get to Rock Falls, and Rock Falls is traditionally a Class A powerhouse. Now in Illinois, we had 2 classes until 2007, and then we expanded to 4 classes. So I moved to Rock Falls in 2005, still in that 2-class system. And their coach left because they got bumped up from the lower school class to the upper school class. So their coach thought they couldn't win anymore. So I get there, and these guys are really just kind of distraught over the whole thing, right? They're upset. They're expected to be the best team in Class A, and they would have been. And now they got to play with the big boys. And so even more so, I just kind of like, hey, show me what you guys run. Show me what you guys like. Tell me what you like about what you ran. Tell me what you don't like. And this was a program that really high IQ kids, they were running probably 40, 50 sets. I mean, just a ton of them. And so there was about 2 days where I sat there with a notepad and just kind of scribbled stuff down. And okay, I like this. I don't like that. We probably saved 20 sets that they were already good at. So we could just kind of keep running. You know what I mean? They were super talented. They gelled really well together, great chemistry. And I didn't want to get in the way of that. I just wanted to try to enhance it any way I could. So, you know, long story short, again, let your players tell you what you should be doing. I think that's the mistake that too many young coaches make is they ignore what's right in front of them. And that's their talent level, their skill level, their IQ level. Run with that stuff first and then build off of that. You know, it doesn't mean you can't add your own touches here and there, but you know, you have to get kids to want to play for you early on. And I think there's a way you can meet them in the middle when you're taking over a program.
So I want to get into, you mentioned you left coaching to get your master's, kind of took that break.
Yep.
You know, why was that important for you to get your master's? Or was that something that, as a result of taking that break, you thought, you know, like what was kind of the situation there? Was that something you were looking to do, and the opportunity came along, or, you know what I mean, or vice versa?
Yeah, it just all kind of fell into place. I mentioned being at Boylan Catholic and just needing to move into a public school situation with a better, you know, getting back to our pension system in the state of Illinois. Our pension's really good, but in the private sector, I didn't have that working at Boylan Catholic. This is a huge mistake I made when I was young. And when I took my first head coaching job, I was in the middle of a master's degree program, and I dropped a class my first year as a head coach in January because I just couldn't handle it. It was too much, you know, first season, all that stuff. And then I did it again the second year of the program. So I was 2 classes shy of a master's degree for the longest time. And by the time I started it 8 years later, the program was no longer available. So I had to literally start over. Good news is now I'm up towards the top of the pay scale, but a lot of that was just about moving on the pay scale as a teacher, you know, putting my family in a better position, all of those things. But it also enabled me to be certified in the business department, which before I was a social studies teacher. So it just kind of, as luck happened, the job that was right in my district that I live in needed a business teacher. So it just kind of fell into place. And as I said earlier, that was the opportunity to coach my kid again, which I would have lost at the private school. By leaving Boylan Catholic. So, you know, it's funny sometimes how things fall into place. Like sometimes us teachers get bounced around a little bit, And, as coaches, we choose to leave sometimes, and we're kind of forced to leave other times because of teaching situations. My wife is also an elementary education teacher. So we actually left Rock Falls because her teaching job was eliminated completely. Their district in nearby Dixon, Illinois, just got rid of art. They just done. So as an art teacher, we were kind of out in a rural area, and we had to get back to the Rockford area where it was just a little more metropolitan area and more opportunities for her. So it's so funny how sometimes you sit back and you're like, man, how did I get here? Like, never imagined leaving this place or being at this place, but life takes you on a funny journey sometimes.
All right, so then let's get into the side effect of that, of being out of coaching, right, for a year, or for that time. How was that like to adjust to it? Or was it one of those things where you're so busy with your master's and trying to get that, because even during COVID, right, you come to November and you're not coaching, and you're like, we're all looking around like, well, what are we supposed to do? What are we supposed to do here? Like,
right. We're writing books.
I'm not quite sure I have,
right.
Well, right. Books, podcasts, but I got all this time. So what was that like when you took that time off, and how did you adjust?
Yeah, it wasn't really a lot of time off. It was a 13-month accelerated program. So it was one of those where it kind of slaps in the face and keeps slapping in the face for 13 months. And, papers are due every Saturday night and all that stuff. And I continued to coach my son's travel baseball team. I've always tried to be really active with my kids' stuff. So I didn't really have a lot of time, and I didn't miss a lot until like mid-February came around. It's like, okay, they're talking about the big game in the conference tonight. Okay, I'm going to go to the gym tonight and just watch this game. And then the postseason rolls around, and there's nothing like that feeling. Like, you just can't replace that, no matter what. And you hear coaches talk about that all the time who have retired, that just, they just miss those Friday night lights, whether it's in the gym or out in the football field or whatever it is. It's hard to replace that rush of adrenaline and that camaraderie, and just so many things that you miss about it. So about February of that year, I kind of knew, like, all right, this program is going to be done in a couple months. I got to start looking. And honestly, there were only a couple of jobs in the area I would have gone back for. My kids were pretty well established in their schools. We didn't want to move them. So it really became about, if this one opens up at Harlem, it'd be perfect. We're ready for a challenge anyways. And maybe one or two others in the area that we might have taken a close look at. But timing wise, it just worked out. Like I said, I've been pretty lucky with that stuff.
So, by the way, as somebody that's currently getting their master's and trying to coach at the same time, I can relate in every single way possible. So now I kind of want to go into the X's and O's. I kind of asked you kind of about laying the foundation in the 5 schools you've been at, but now let's dig a little deeper into the X's and O's. In those 5 schools you've been at, do you feel X's and O's wise that you've done some of the similar things? Because I know for me, even in year 6 of the program I run, I've completely changed from my year 1 to year 6, what I've done X's and O's wise. So do you feel like you've done something similar? Do you feel like over your years you've adapted, or each school, do you change completely every time?
I think for me, there's always been a core there. Our break has always stayed the same. Certain secondary quick hitters have always stayed the same. But I think we've been very different. When I was at Rockford Jefferson, some of my best teams, we took 4th in the state there in 2005. And, we were 6'6", 6'8", 6'10". But like I said already, we didn't have a strong background in terms of a high IQ. So we really had to, and we had guys that just didn't remember sets very well. Like, we just really struggled with that. So we had to invent some ways to get our kids to buy in and move the basketball. So we started charting what we call lane touches. We would chart every possession was either a lane touch or no lane touch. Either the ball physically went into the paint or it didn't. And from there, we would chart results. We would chart, if it went in the lane. What we generally found is when we had a lane touch on possessions, we'd score about 75% of the times. We'd score at least 1 point. When we didn't, it was usually 30% or less. And we just kept force feeding those numbers to our kids. Just, all right, how do we get it in the paint? We just kind of left it open. You can drive it there. You can throw it inside because we were big. But we just really had to, I don't know if brainwash is the right word, but yeah, it probably is. Really just had to brainwash them with those numbers because we were not going to out scheme anybody, so we just had to get great buy-in, and they saw the results. They saw the wins piling up when the numbers correlated. The result was a win. And so, that was something we had to kind of invent along the way. But yeah, I mean, even from last year to this year, we'll be a little bit different. Our talent's a little bit different. We're going to open it up a little more for our guys this year. maybe stress a little more motion principles. I personally have always liked quick hitters to start the offense. I love the concept. I love the idea of motion. I've tried read and react before. I've tried a lot of different things. Where I'm always continuously disappointed is early offense. Like it's too stagnant. And I just don't think, I think for me, it's always been better when we just run a quick hitter. It may just be a simple horn set. It doesn't have to be anything super extravagant, but it's something where I know we're going to get X amount of passes, screens, and maybe a reversal or two. And we still do a ton of motion breakdown drills. We still try to get them to just really be concept driven after that set either breaks down or finishes. And we haven't gotten a shot yet. We try to keep that flow moving and going. But I personally, and again, this is what I didn't know 27 years ago. Personally, I know now that I just can't tolerate that stagnant early offense. I've got to have control over it. I've got to know what kind of actions we're going to get and be able to dictate that a little bit, be able to be matchup driven or whatever it is. And, but then kind of let the kids go. Now, one thing I always do, and I always give the kids this option, I always tell them, I said, look, if you run your break really well, you push the ball and you get it to the other side of the floor and you start breaking the defense down, I'm happy sitting down and just letting you play, So I always kind of put it back on them. And I think that's something you learn to do as coaches. You learn to leverage things. You learn to make it so that you're not the bad guy, even though in a way you are controlling things. Like, hey, I gave you the opportunity. You're just not moving the ball. So now I'm going to step in and run a bunch of sets and we're going to make sure the ball moves one way or another. So that's a big part of who we are. Our kids know that if they push the ball and swing the ball and attack, I'll sit down. If they don't, I'll stand up and I'll just open up the playbook. So I think any opportunity you have as a coach, it doesn't have to be X's and O's, whatever it is, give them the opportunity to decide it, and I think that a lot of that goes all the way back to your preseason. We write a vision statement. We set goals, we come up with our core standards or principles or whatever you want to call them. But I always bring it back to, all right, what do you need me to do? What do you need us to do as coaches? And the beauty of that is kids will always say the right things. They'll tell you exactly what you want to hear. They'll say, we need you to push us even when we don't feel like working those days, or, don't let us off the hook, make us do this, make us do that. And I think when you do that in preseason, you have the opportunity you don't have to be the bad cop all the time. You just remind them, hey, remember what you told me my job was, right? Not let you off the hook on days like this when we don't feel like doing what we're supposed to do. So I think anytime you can put it on the kids and hey, remember, this is what you wanted to do. I think you've got the opportunity to make connections there. And again, I think kids today really struggle with constant yelling, you know what I mean? They need discipline, but you have to be a little more creative on how you get them that discipline. And hopefully a little bit can be, I think they put it on themselves. I think you've opened some doors as a coach and, can really, I think, be consistent with your output with your kids every day.
Yeah, that was really great stuff there, Coach. That was so awesome. I think that's worthwhile for any coach, to be honest. Especially go into different places and like you said at the beginning, if you have 6'6", 6'8", and 6'10", that probably helps too, right?
Yeah, can I have that?
That always helps.
That
always helps.
Where do you find those guys? And can I have a couple?
I did have a
girls?
7-footer too. So I had a 7-footer at Rock Falls too, but I haven't had a whole lot of size since then. So enjoy it while it's there, because it's hit and miss for sure.
All right, so I want to talk about your coaching staffs. Obviously, when you're changing positions and going to different places, you inherit some coaches. You're maybe lucky enough to be able to bring some of your own people on. So what are things you look for in assistant coaches? And then, have you had any guys that you've tried to carry over with you at the places you've gone? And what are those things that they did that you wanted to bring them along?
So, yeah, I think I'll start with this. Early on in my career, I was terrible at utilizing assistant coaches. I think I had this standard and this just things had to be done a certain way. I was kind of a OCD, whatever you want to call it. And I just didn't trust people to do it the right way. And that was entirely on me. That wasn't on my assistant coaches, but I just wasn't great early on in my coaching career at delegating, at finding their strengths and helping them use them. Now I want to empower them more and more. Like it doesn't matter what I think we get locked in sometimes with assistant coaches. I say we, because I'm talking about my past history here, you know, but I'm sure others have had the same things where you get locked in on what coaches can't do. And it sometimes really paralyzes you, and you really got to find what they can do. And so I've got a couple of young coaches right now that have completely taken over our weight room program. I'm there sometimes, I'm not there a lot of times. Some days I come in, I'm like, man, I don't even know what this lift is. Show me what it is, you know, and just put trust in them to do what they're good at. They've just really thrived on that. And that's something that, you know, I'm not in the same spot I was 20 years ago when I started, when I had no kids, you know, and I could do everything. Now I can't do that. You know, when I went back to coaching after that 1 year break, one of the things I told my wife is I'm going to continue to coach our kids teams. I'm going to find a way. You know, I coach travel softball right now, which is 11 months out of the year. And you know, it's just something I'm going to stay into. And that's another thing that I tell our players, like, look, I'm leaving practice early tonight. My kid's got a game. I'm going to go watch it. You know, as much as I want to win tomorrow night, you know, you guys are fine without me. And as much as I want to win tomorrow night, I need you guys to be leaders, to be good parents, to be all that stuff down the road as well. And if I don't show them what that looks like, who's showing them? You know, in some of these kids' houses, nobody's showing them. So, you know, I make sure that our assistants, kind of the Bruce Arians line, right? If I find out you missed your kid's recital or game or something, I'm going to fire you. We try to live by that. Like, we'll figure it out. You know, you're not here tonight. Okay, we'll move things around and we'll cover each other. And you know, I think sometimes we take our jobs way too seriously. So, but yeah, back to you. I mean, and then there's a couple of assistants I've tried to bring with me from place to place. Gordy Casper is a guy that coached me at Jefferson. We took fourth in the state and brought him to Boylan. Actually, he was at Boylan before I got there. We kind of split when I went to Rock Falls, and when I came back, he was at Boylan for a while and then had hung it up, and I'm kind of drug him back out there because he knew me really well. And you know, when you're trying to step in I had to step in after, you know, one of the greatest coaching legends in Illinois history at Boylan. Steve Goers won 881 games there, and I think he's second now to Gene Pingatore. If you've ever seen and if you've ever seen Hoop Dreams, you know Gene Pingatore. You know, he was in Hoop Dreams back in the late 80s, early 90s, and you know, so they tell you not to be the guy that follows the legend, but I kind of had enough ego that I was going to give it a shot, and so, you know, it was important for me to bring a guy like Gordy with. So. Yeah, it's anytime you get that guy who wants to be in that role, and that's the role they cherish, and they're good being the assistant, and you can bring them with. That's always a great situation as well.
Yeah, I will just say I completely agree with you. My first year as a head coach, I tried to do absolutely everything, and then I realized by year 2 or 3, I was like, you know what? To give them ownership, you're in charge of this. You're in charge of this. Not only did it take things off my plate, it gives your assistants ownership. I think that was a great point you made there. And also shout out to Steve Goers. I serve on the IBCA board with him. I see him every year at the Hall of Fame meeting. Got to love yourself some Steve Goers.
Steve's the best. You know, when I was teaching at Boylan, sometimes he would just come in. I'm in the middle of class. He'd just come in. He's retired. He'd wander in and just start talking to me for 10, 15 minutes. We're in the middle of a lesson. And it's like, all right, it can wait. You know, it's Coach Goers' time. We're going to hang out and talk. And so, yeah, I had a great experience taking – Steve made it easy for me to be the guy that followed him. And that was something I really appreciated.
So I do want to just dig into a little part of your master's degree. You know, we do our homework on our guests, and I saw that your master's degree is in instructional technology, which is a big part of obviously education today. And with COVID, it became a bigger part. But I want to hit on technology and coaching. You know, how do you feel technology and coaching has made things easier? And let's also be honest, technology in this world today has also made coaching a little bit more challenging. So kind of just take us through technology-wise for you. What are ways you use technology as a tool, and maybe what challenges it may cause?
I think the biggest benefits is programs like Huddle. There's a lot of others popping up now. You know, we started with Crossover, which I loved, and then Huddle bought Crossover out. But I think scouting wise, like, you know, for my marriage, Huddle's been great because I'm not gone every night. We have a night off out scouting. I was a guy that if I could be there in person scouting, I wanted to be the one there, because I think, you know, you said, where does technology hurt us? It hurts us there a little bit because it's hard to gauge speed and size on film. right? In person, it's just different. So I think, now we do probably 90% of our scouting off of film. And sometimes we're a little surprised, man, this kid's faster than we thought he was, or whatever it is. The other thing, obviously, the huge benefit with Huddle is the analytics that you get, the stats. I think, and I love analytics, but I think the downside of analytics is we take them to be gospel too much, especially at the high school level. And one example I like to give is, if you live and die by analytics, they'll tell you that you can never shoot a 15-foot jump shot. Like you just shouldn't. If you're looking at field goal percentage, maybe not 15, but definitely not 17-foot jump shots, right? Now I've got a kid on my team who that's all he can do. Like he's not good off the dribble. He's not a 3-point shooter, but he can knock down a mid-range shot. If I go off the analytics would tell me that kid, I guess you just can't shoot because you don't shoot one of the two shots that factor into field goal percentage and the way the game is being played today. But what we miss out on there is that kid, if he gets to knock down that shot, is going to be more bought in defensively. He's going to be a better rebounder. He's going to do all the little things that I need him to do to win. And at the high school level, how many times is that our number 4 and maybe our number 5 starter, where they're just not super talented offensively? They're good athletes. They'll work hard. They'll run through a brick wall for you. And now we just go off analytics and we say, sorry, you can't shoot anymore, when they can make that shot. I think that's where you got to kind of take it with a grain of salt and just, use your gut. Like if I can get a little more out of this kid by getting 4 or 6 points out of him from mid-range, and he's just more bought in from start to finish, my team's going to be better despite what the analytics say. So, and like I said, I love it. I love that I can look at in Huddle and find out who my best 5 were last night together. Like what was the best lineup together? I love all those things. But I think people who say you can't do this or you can't do that because the analytics tell you that, I think we're losing touch with reality and with our teams a little bit. I think you have to know what's best for your team, and analytics can help you, but they shouldn't be making all your decisions for you.
All right. So now I want to go into some late game philosophies and preparing for those. What are some things you believe late game, and what are some things you like to do? And then, in the course of practice and games, maybe even the timeout aspect, right? Of saying, okay, hey, this is what we're going to run. If it's maybe something you haven't done before or done a couple times, how do you implement and prepare your players for that?
I think the first lesson any young coach is going to find out the hard way is if you haven't practiced it, you ain't running it well, right? It just isn't going to happen. Now with high school kids, probably now with college kids in a lot of cases, depending on the level. I mean, you've got to practice it. It's not fair to put kids in those situations when you haven't practiced it. And so you have to schedule your week out to where you're getting your end of game situations. It can be end of quarter or end of game. There's a difference, but you should be working on either end of quarter or end of game, some facet every single day. It might be 5 minutes. It might be a 5-on-0 shell for 5 minutes, something. But I think that situation becomes more about a player's confidence more so than anything else. And if you're able to say, hey, we've done this a ton of times before, just kind of, you've got to be the most chill guy in the huddle at that point when you need to make that last minute shot or you need to get that last minute stop. But you have to just be able to remind them, hey, we've done this before. All right. I think that's first and foremost. As far as end of game stuff for us, our kids kind of know, like there's a certain point we hit like about a minute and a half left to go in the game. If we're up 4, 6, 8, we're going to start switching everything. Our Seattle call is we're going to switch everything when we hit about that minute and a half point. We hit that minute and a half point. We're playing man-to-man about 3/4 court. We don't want that ball rolling to half court. So we're really just showing 3/4 court just to get the clock running, right? We talk about being like a defensive back, you're backpedaling, you're sitting down. There's just certain things that our kids just know. Like we just look at, hey, we're white 75 and we're Seattle. We're switching everything. So we do it, we practice it. There's a comfort level with it. They just kind of nod and they, okay, we've done this a billion times before. If we're behind 6 to 8 points, we have one set that we run. It's just, again, it's our comfort level. We run at the end of every quarter. Our goal is to have the ball at the end of every quarter. We'll hold it for 45 seconds if we have to. And we'll run a set where we're running our wings from the corners. Our wing from the right corner is going to run off a single screen from the 4-man and a double screen from the 3 and the 5-man. It's really a misdirection play. He's not going to be open very often. Teams will switch that. Our 3-man then goes off the 4-man the other direction. He gets open quite a bit. But if he's not open, then we're looking Our one man will drag the ball towards the right sideline, and our 5-man will L cut to the top of the key, and we'll just duck in for a high low. Our kids know that takes about 12 seconds to get all the way through with a shot and a tip in. And we do it a lot. So if we're down 6 or 8 points and we're just struggling offensively, we're just running that every trip. It's in their comfort zone. It's something that we know exactly where everybody's at. We've done it a million times because we do it at the end of the first, second, third quarter anyways. We run end of quarter offense probably twice a week for 10, 15 minutes. So again, I think comfort level is really important to relieve pressure in those situations. And we can be having a terrible game and be down 6 or 8, still have a chance to maybe steal one. So you want to get into their comfort level a little bit there. I love my favorite end of game play, like full court end of game. If you think back to Bryce Drew in the NCAA tournament with Valparaiso, I can't remember how many, was that the late 90s? I can't remember how long ago that was. Some young guys like, what are you talking about?
Miss, yeah.
We run a play called Victory. It's very similar to that. We run it with a defense. We run it without a defense. We'll bring the freshman team over because they don't have a clue what's going on because our varsity guys will cheat. You know how that goes. They'll cheat it like crazy. So, but timing of cuts and the details and all that stuff it's a beautiful thing when it works. And I always tell the kids, look, the pressure's off. To go full court in 3 to 7 seconds and score, it's tough to do. But we only run that if we have to. My favorite thing is if the other team ties it or takes the lead with under 10 seconds to go, we're going. Because I think what ultimately happens is the game is so chaotic. It benefits us to have the ball in that chaos versus the defense, who I think one of the hardest things to do, one of the most underrated things is knowing how much time is on the clock defensively late in the game. Because I think when you see 6 seconds on the clock, it feels like that's going to go really fast. And next thing you know, there's been 3 passes, 3 dribbles, and a tip in. And the game is like, how did we lose that? Like that felt like an eternity. So we just want to get in and go. Long story short, we want to get in and go and space the floor in our break and just really attack. But sometimes I think there's somebody's going to overhelp, somebody's going to overcommit to help, and somebody's going to get a good look. Are we going to make that shot? I don't know, but I think that's our best opportunity. Too many times, I think even when we practice it 100 times, pressure gets the kids. Or you're playing a conference game against a team that's playing you for the second time. They have a pretty good idea what you want to do as well, and they make it really difficult for you. So, if we gave up a bucket to tie it or we fall behind, ultimately we're big on know the score. Like, I think that sounds really basic, but I think a lot of kids don't know the score. Know the score and let's get it and go. If they call a timeout, now we got to set something up. That's okay. Let's force them to call a timeout. I also, the flip side of that, defensively, if we score to tie or take the lead, a lot of times I'll call the timeout now because I know what I want to do offensively and create that chaos. And now I want to, we just tied it or took the lead. I'm going to use that timeout because I want to set my defense. And if it's under 10 seconds, a lot of times we'll play a 1-2-2 kind of a ball press type thing in that situation, which we don't practice a lot. But we're not trying to be really good at it for 45 seconds. We're trying to be great at it for 5 to 7 seconds in those situations. So again, a lot of stuff there is, and there's a lot of what I wrote about in the book is just, this is what I do. It's not necessarily the right way for you and your program, but I try to just pose question after question after question to help coaches figure out what's best for them. What does your talent dictate? What are you able to tolerate as a coach? What do you like? What do you dislike? Because those are things that just a list of questions I wish I would have had 25 years ago would have helped me get there so much faster instead of all the painstaking mistakes and learning the hard way. So that was a big motivation behind the book. And there's a lot there. I just talked about a lot of stuff in the game, but there's so many different scenarios. I mean, that's another thing I love about our game. It's just different every time.
All right. So I'm a special education teacher at heart. So the learning style discussion for me is always interesting. So kind of for you, how do you help your players learn, / how do you help them prepare for a game? How do you help them scout an opponent? Kind of take us through that. How do you learn? How do you hit all those learning styles? And then how do you help them prepare?
Let me start by saying this. I am not a keep it simple guy. You may have already figured that out by listening to me. I'm not a keep it simple guy. I was told that a lot as a young coach. You got to keep it simple, this and that. But I also have learned that the more you raise the bar, the more kids want. If you have a good relationship, the more they want to meet that every time you raise that bar. So we're constantly talking about things that can build our IQ. Whether it be situational stuff. I coach the bench a lot more than I coach the floor during a game, and I got a lot of guys there who probably aren't going to see the floor this year, but next year they're going to be there a lot. So anytime I got something, I'm going to turn around and talk to the bench, because the guys on the floor are kind of busy. They can't really listen to me at the moment, but we're going to coach every situation. I think obviously repetition is huge. I mean, the more repetition you can get on, and when I say we don't keep it simple, we have a core, we have core things that we do every year, concepts that we really hammer, that we know we want to be really good at. So I don't think you have to be super simple, but you have to know what's important to you, right? You got to know really what you're good at and what's important to you. That list should be fairly short. Like, I should be able to come watch your team play and say, oh man, it's clear that they're this, and this are really important to them. I should be able to find 3 things that are really important to you on an average to decent night, and I think any coach should be able to go to watch another coach and just be able to pick out 3 things. As far as preparing the guys, we're big on scouting reports. I'm huge on scouting reports. And I kind of hammer one chapter in the book about coaches say, oh, we just scout ourselves. And I just call them out and said, you're lazy. It's your job is to give your kids the best chance to win. And if giving them, now how much you give them, that's entirely up to you. But if you don't give them something on who you're playing, if you're not walking through some stuff, if you're not giving them, I think you can win so many high school basketball games by taking away option 1 for sure. And if you can take away option 1 and option 2, that's the equalizer in high school basketball, because most teams don't have 2 great ball handlers. Most teams don't have 2 great bigs. The whole let's get this guy in foul trouble thing, the challenge them to get 2 fouls on this guy early. There's just so many things that you can take away from teams. And in a lot of cases, teams that are more talented than you. So, if you're a guy who says, in my mind, if you're a guy that says, we just scout ourselves, we don't worry about everybody else, I think you're cheating your kids a little bit. I think your kids, they want the best chance to win, and my job is to give them the best chance to win. So our scouting report is really, really extensive. It can be 10, 12 pages some nights. Doesn't mean we give our kids 10 or 12 pages. We give them a cheat sheet off of that 10 or 12 pages. The night before a game, maybe 2 nights before a game, depending on how much time we have to prepare, we're walking through sets. We're talking about how we want to guard this screen or what we want to do with this screen. We're reading through the scouting report together. We're taking away their number. We're very clear about this is their best scorer. This is what he does well. This is what we want to take away. And I think, I think that's really, really important in high school basketball. I think you can win a lot of games but just being more prepared than the other team. And it's hard. It's not easy. It takes a lot of time. There's a lot of, you've got to be great at managing time. I think as a coach, you've got to be able to grade papers here and watch film here at the same time. Not that any of us would do that at the same time, but you know how it goes.
No, we do. It's okay.
Yeah, we do. And just, I'm never going to walk away from a loss and feel like it was because I cut a corner. Like, I just can't live with that. That's kind of my why with coaching, is making sure that kids never have any regrets about whatever their time is, whether it be, 4 years, the high school level or beyond. So I need to make sure I live that and I walk that. And I think that preparation for me is really, really important. And I think it's made me a much better coach. I think I learned so much more about the game from guys I coach against. I learned a lot about the game from just watching film on other teams. So I think, and every once in a while we'll have some fun and we'll put their sets in, and we'll call it whatever the name of their school is, and we'll run it against them. And, our kids love doing that too. So I think you can find a way to make that fun as well.
All right. So I have an interesting follow-up to something you said just now, which was, if I watch Harlem basketball, what 2 or 3 things am I going to notice are important to Coach Winter and Harlem basketball?
Man-to-man defense, communication. Those are 2 things that if the energy is low, you're going to hear me just yelling and screaming and being the biggest cheerleader on the sideline because I think energy is contagious. So, I'll give them as much as I need to give them on the sideline to get them going. So early in games, we're a no middle team defense. So you'll hear me screaming no middle the whole game. Like, people in the stands are like, he's got to know his kids know it by now. He said it 4,000 times tonight. But it's not about it's about the energy level, and it's about modeling things for your kids. So I know there's a lot of coaches that just say, I can't do a whole lot on game night. I'm just going to sit down. I've done my work. But game night, I'm their biggest cheerleader. Like I'm going to provide energy no matter what. Like that's something I can do. It doesn't take a whole lot of talent on my part to be able to do that. So we're going to guard defensively. We're going to push the ball. Doesn't mean we're looking to shoot early, but we're trying to put pressure on the defense. We're going to get up and down. And then most years you're going to see us pressing. We run what I call a hybrid zone press. And it's something that's, again, it's kind of that evolution of 25 years where I used to be a man-to-man press guy, run and jump guy. Just wanted to control trap areas a little more. So I started playing around with the diamond press. And the diamond press is great when they throw it to the ball side, but on the weak side, we would get killed. And I saw Don Showalter talk at a PGC clinic probably 5-6 years ago, about how they rotate. They play a diamond press with Team USA. He was coaching, I think, the 16 under USA team back then. And so obviously he was deep and had a lot of talent. And he would talk about how on an entry pass against a diamond press, they would rotate to a 2-2-1 zone. Because every time they tried to chase that trap 20, 30 feet, by the time they got there, ball's already hit the middle or the sideline and it's gone, and they're just chasing it down the floor. And I'm like, man, this is perfect. And I just had one of those teams where I had 11 guys coming back that all had to play, and we had to find some way to get them tired. So that system just really fit in perfectly for us. So you'll see us pressing, you'll see us, and we fall back to a man-to-man and just high energy. Communication is extremely important for us. Early help, rotations. You should see second and third efforts defensively from our guys quite a bit.
All right, so I want to go. Where's Illinois high school basketball going? What's the future? Where is it rule changes? Is it style of play? Is it
question right here?
Is it well? I mean, it could be how we change our classes, right? 3A, 4A, back to 2A. Where the state championship is, right? Because that's always a giant debate, right? Every year, and it goes back and forth. So where are we going with high school basketball in Illinois?
I loved our state tournament back when it was 2 classes. I thought it was just a great atmosphere both weekends. I think the move to 4 classes, it was pressure to that. Let's get more teams trophies. And I think they thought, let's get more teams involved, so it's going to increase revenue too for our state association. And it just simply has gone the opposite direction on them. I think the interest level has been lost. I tell you, my Rock Falls team that year I took over, we had 750 kids in a 2-class system. We were the smallest big school in the state, and we lose in the super section of Schaumburg, who's got 3,000 kids. We don't get those games anymore. We just don't get them. When I was at Oregon, we had 600 kids. We were one of the bigger small schools, and we won a 2-point game in a regional championship game against a school that had like 112 kids. Just a great atmosphere. And back then it was, if you were that small school, winning that regional was your state championship. You just put it in perspective a little bit differently.
100%.
I would love to see us go, maybe scale back to 3 classes. I think that would be really good for Illinois. I'm not sure it's going to happen, but I would love to see him try just kind of scaling it back a little bit. I would love to see a shot clock in Illinois. I think it's time. I think
that's my thing.
And I'm a traditionalist. I'll say that, just qualify with that. For a long time, I resisted that, but I think it's just time. I think we got to stop with the excuses about it's too much money or people won't know how to run it and this and that. They've got it figured out in Europe. They've got it figured out in a lot of different states. I think the referees can handle it. I think that's whether the ball hit the rim or not is not going to be the hardest thing they do that night. The block charge call is still going to be the hardest thing they do that night. So I just think we've made too many excuses for too long. And I just think it'll speed the game up. Some coaches will be ready for it. Some coaches won't be, but I feel confident the way we run our quick hitters that we'll be okay with it. So I'm thinking, strategically, we might have a little bit of an advantage those first few years while some other coaches catch up. But yeah, I think the state tournament was once just a great thing in Illinois. It's still super hard, man. I see guys who I was at a coaches clinic down in Georgia a couple of months ago, or about a month ago, actually speaking. And, you see these guys that have won 10 straight state championships in Georgia. I'm like, Yeah, you're not doing that in Illinois. Like that's just, it just doesn't happen in Illinois. You win one, you've done something pretty special. I've been down there once and lost in a super sectional 3 times now, and that's an accomplishment. But every time I applied for a job in the last 20 years, so and so, he's won 2 state championships in Kansas. And then I go research Kansas, and they've got 150 schools and 7 classes. So you win 3 games, you're a state champ or something like that. So I still think our setup is great. I still think it's our talent and the ability to win a state championship is a huge accomplishment. But I think the process broke somewhere along the lines of splitting from 2 classes to 4 classes.
There's so much that you just said that I agree with that I would like to get into, but for all of our listeners, we'll move on to our last 2 segments. So many Illinois things I would love to hit on. So for our last 2 segments, we always start with the 30-second timeout. It's your opportunity to speak about whatever you want to talk about. You can talk about you, your family, your program, a charity, something you're interested in, a hobby outside of basketball, anything you want to talk about. 30 seconds. The floor is yours.
30 seconds, man. I think, I'm a huge fast pitch softball guy. I never coached softball until last year, but coaching girls has been awesome. They listen. Guys, you should try that more often. But I'm going to divert from that. I think one message I'd give to coaches right now is, if you're a young coach, make sure you find your future wife has got to be all in. All right, that's huge. Your family's got to be all in. I think when your family is all in, it can be a magical thing. A lot of coaches you hear, they step aside because of family. My family is going to push me right back into it every chance they get because I know how much I love it. So I've been blessed as far as that goes. Not everybody's going to be that lucky, but just understand the impact it's going to have. It's going to be a lot for your family, your parents in the stands, your wife. They gotta sit through a lot. Was that 30 seconds?
Yeah, it was good. That was really good.
That was good.
No, there's a timer
you
on there.
You didn't even get to the second horn. It was really good.
Sweet.
Referee's not over there. Come on, guys, you gotta go. Come on.
That's not the way it goes in a game. I can tell you that much.
Yeah, exactly. They're over there before the first one. All right. So our last segment's quick hitters, just kind of random questions.
All right.
And it could be a basketball or anything. I'm going to add one that we didn't have on there, but best player you coached against, like a guy you went up against and you're like, oh boy, what are we going to do here?
Hands down. And Sean Livingston, hands down. When Sean was healthy back when he was young, I mean, he was being compared to Magic Johnson. I don't think that was a stretch. I mean, he may have been more talented than Magic before that, just that awful knee injury.
All right. So we like to do some random ones. So are you an iPhone guy or an Android guy?
100% iPhone.
Nah, there he is.
Your favorite coach as a kid growing up?
I'm old. It was the coach Ditka.
Oh,
I was in 85. I was 11 when the Bears won the Super Bowl the last, now I'm 47. So I'm still waiting for number 2. But the coach, he was just a great personality. But, as a young coach, I'd say Dick Bennett, Rick Pitino were some of the guys. John Chaney at Temple, guys I loved watching. Pete Carrill at Princeton.
You weren't trying to fight Calipari then, as John Chaney. You weren't trying to fight. No, I'm just teasing.
We'll pretend that didn't happen. But,
yeah, there you go.
Chaney was fiery, man. He was.
He did everything.
Hey, after a couple of Packer fan guests we've had, I'm good with him.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, the Bears, yeah.
Well, what's funny is one of my former players at Boylan is playing for the Packers right now, and I'm a huge Bear fan. So it's like, and I'm a huge Cubs fan, and I got a former player that got drafted by the Cardinals in the first round. So,
oh boy,
just a reminder that God has a sense of humor.
Amen to that. All right. So for you, where do you see yourself in 5 years?
I think I'm still doing what I'm doing. I think the only exception might be, here's the tough thing I've got coming is my daughter will be a freshman when my son is a senior. So now he graduates and moves on. She's a sophomore. I'm going to have to miss some games because we're going to play some of the same nights. In our league, we both play Friday nights. They play Tuesday, we play Wednesday. So we have that night off where we're not overlapping. But Fridays, that's going to be tough. But I think I'll be doing what I'm doing now. I think it'll be tough for me to give it up just quite yet, especially if my son's away at college. my daughter's gonna be going away pretty soon. I'll need something to continue to fill that time.
All right, kind of a simple one. Your favorite candy?
This is old school. I'm an everlasting Gobstoppers guy.
Okay.
There we
I've
go.
got them in my pocket all the time. My softball girls bring them to me all the time because they know I'm chewing on the whole practice. And yeah, old school.
I remember when I was in school, there was a store that was still kind of old school by my school that you could get like the everlasting Gobstoppers for like 5 cents in the individual wrappers.
Yep.
It was an old school store. It was kind of on its way out, but you could get all
I've got
those kind
boxes. I've got boxes of them in a drawer. You can't eat a lot of them, you know, because a box will last you forever. It's kind of under everlasting, right? So my softball girls keep buying them. I just keep throwing them in this drawer, and I can't keep up. But I appreciate it. But
all right, so best game or games that you've coached in or watched. So maybe one game you've coached in that's one of your best, and one game you just were as a fan.
So the best game I've ever coached in for me was a sectional final game. It was Rock Falls against Boylan. Before I got to Boylan, I was coaching at Rock Falls. And that was the year I talked about. That was the year Rock Falls obviously won the game because we lost to Schaumburg in that super sectional. But we went to overtime. We had played a Class A schedule all year. We played small schools all year long. And so just adapting to the speed of the game against the bigger schools took us a while. We fell behind 22-9. I think we were down 22-13 at halftime. We tied it, had the ball at the end of the game, and we had a kid that Seth Blair, who's in AAA with the Red Sox right now. He's like 32 pitching AAA. He took 5 years off and he went back and he's throwing like 99. Just tell you what kind of an athlete he is. Just an insane athlete. He was the Pac-10 pitcher of the year at Arizona State in 2010, I think it was. Seth missed a layup, kind of like trying to avoid a charge last minute, just kind of changed the angle a little bit, missed it. So we go to overtime and 41-41, we got the ball with about 50 seconds left. And we know, we talked about high IQ kids. We're going to hold the ball. And we had a set called, and I noticed that Boylan switched one matchup. So, and I never do this, but I just started screaming. And there's 5,000 people in this gym at Rock Valley College. I started screaming. We're just going flat, flat, flat. We get the ball to the kid who's got a post player on him. Now he's a guard. And I just know he's going to get by this kid and force something. And I don't know what, but he gets in the paint, kicks it to the left corner. He drives one dribble, pulls a couple defenders over. We get that cross court skip pass right in front of our bench. And Seth was that kid that elevated on a jump shot just beautifully, like higher than everybody else. And he just did it effortlessly. And he hit a 24-footer at the buzzer, and the place just erupted, 5,000 people in there. And it was insane. It was one of the best endings I've ever seen. The other one, I would say, Jalen Brunson against Jaleel Okafor in the state. Was that a semifinal game, if I remember right? The winner was going to the championship. The year before, Brunson beat my Boylan team in the super sectional by a few points. And he was a sophomore then. I think this was his senior year. And he scored, 56 out of 68 points. Jaleel Okafor went like 34 points and 17 rebounds or something insane like that. And Whitney Young they beat him by it was 71-68 or something like that. But Brunson had 56 out of 68. That was the best game I think I've ever seen down at the state tournament.
All right. So I know we said we're going to let you pick, but you've talked about a lot of your end game. So I'm going to throw one at you here. All right. So you got ball up, you call timeout. You got sideline out of bounds, right? In front of your bench, and you're half the court there. What are you going to for your end game set? I don't want you to give it away, so all your opponents know, but what is some of your, I guess, maybe concepts or things you want to try to get action wise?
One thing I love to do, there's two plays I really like doing. They both kind of involve, I like misdirection stuff in that situation because you've got so much pressure on the first cutter. Stevens used to run a play with Butler where he would throw it all the way to the opposite corner. So if you're inbound on the near sideline, he's spotting the shooter up in the far corner. It's kind of a high risk, high reward thing because if they don't bite on it, the kid makes that cross court pass, you're probably not getting a shot off. But I love that open look if we need a three on that backside. And then we've also run some screen to screener action where we kind of go, we're dribbling maybe left across top of the key with a cutter coming, and then cross it back to a screen to screener coming on that near side, just similar to that end of quarter play that we run that we talked about. I think I think misdirection is really good when you're in a high pressure situation late in games, because again, kids will overhelp in those situations.
Well, and a lot of teams go to switching now too. So
right.
force them to communicate, what's going on.
And if you've got to have that high-low option or something in there if a team does switch, just a little something extra just in case you don't get that shooter open.
Well, Coach, we thank you so much for being on. Listeners, again, check out Coach's book, The Journey, Lessons from the Hardwood by Mike Winter. Phenomenal guest, phenomenal coach. So, Coach, thank you for joining us. Thank you for giving an hour of your time and to our listeners. So thank you again.
Hey, I had a blast, guys. CoachWinters.com. You can get the book there. You can get it at Amazon. You can get it at Barnes & Noble and really every other site that sells books. So appreciate you guys. Thanks so much.
Thank you for listening to another episode of the After the Timeout podcast, hosted by Todd Zazadil and Jon Plicki. For more show content and upcoming episodes, follow us on Twitter at After the Timeout, or subscribe to our podcast for upcoming episodes. For show inquiries, you can email us at afterthetimeout@gmail.com. You can find all of our previous episodes on Anchor, Spotify, Breaker, Radio Public, Pocket Casts, Google Podcasts, and Apple Podcasts by searching After the Timeout. We appreciate you listening. Tune in next time for more coaching content in-game, out of the game, and anything in between.